And they've almost become like a Siamese twins. I'm talking about presidential travels and the quest to buy a new presidential jet. That is what we are going to focus here tonight on PM Express. Is it time to buy a new presidential jet as a result of what we are seeing currently, the president himself traveling on a commercial flight? Is this a time to buy a new commercial flight? And the reason why this is important is that the current status of our presidential jet doesn't make it possible for the president or the first gentleman of the republic to actually travel with it. What is the status and what do we know so far? I really want you to stay here with me. And in 13 minutes, we're going to do this analysis before my guest will join me via Zoom for a conversation. Now, this is the status of our presidential jet, currently under maintenance in France. Of course, that's what the late defense minister told us, unfortunately, before he left, that this is the situation of our presidential jet, which has to do some form of maintenance before it returns to the Republic of Ghana, possibly to go ahead with the duties. Let's go ahead and talk about what he actually said, because that is very important. He made certain revelations in his presentation to Parliament, and he said, quote, whenever the president, the presidential jet goes for maintenance, the return date keeps changing. The jet is heavily corroded, but that does not justify some persistently hiring or renting of luxurious aircraft. So he is saying that, look, at the moment, we do not have available the presidential jet. What is happening to it? He says it is heavily corroded, and according to him, the late defense minister, if you look at the engine, the tank, is also corroded. How do you fly around with a jet that has a corroded engine tank? He said that although currently we need to do some form of maintenance, and the plane we understand is in France, it does not justify, the persistent hiring of, he said, luxurious presidential jet. And he is the man, when he was the defense minister before his passing, he was responsible for the travels of the president. When the president is traveling, he has to look at the conditions, whether the president should go with a certain kind of jet. But he was saying that, look, even though we don't have access to the presidential jet, he doesn't think that it was time for us to still go ahead with the hiring of, in his word, luxurious aircraft. Now let's go ahead with the analysis and what we know so far about our presidential jet. Because before the former defense minister left, he told us that this is an aircraft that has a corroded engine tank. But what do we know so far about the Falcon 900 EX Easy, or EASY? What do we know about it? What we know so far is that this is a Dassault Aviation aircraft in France. It was manufactured in France. And how old is it? What do we know more about this aircraft? What we know is that it was manufactured somewhere around 2009 and brought into service or entered service somewhere around 7 July 2010. So this was when it entered into service in Ghana. So if you do the math, roughly, we are talking about some 15 years. 15 years since the aircraft has been in Ghana and has been in service in Ghana. But if you speak to a lot of people who have knowledge about aircraft, they say, look, the age or the year that the aircraft has been in service is not really a big problem. What is so important is the maintenance schedule. What do you do, in terms of the maintenance schedule of the aircraft? Do you follow what has been scheduled and all of that? That is very important, not just looking at how long the aircraft has actually been in service. But let's do some more analysis in terms of required maintenance, because I've spoken about routine maintenance. What do we know so far as long as the Falcon 900 is concerned? This is according to the manual that came with the aircraft that we bought in terms of what we are supposed to do in terms of the maintenance. What must we do? Basic inspection every 200 flight hours. We are supposed to do some basic inspection every 200 flight hours. That is very important. It was part of the routine that we're supposed to follow. Full inspection every year. So every year, the presidential jet must go undergo some full inspection for us to make sure it is in the right condition and for the first gentleman of the land to actually use it. Heavy maintenance every 6 years. And we understand that, per what I showed you, it's been in service in Ghana in 15 years, since 2010. Which means that if you do a simple math, it means we should have done that heavy maintenance, because it's every 6 years. So if you do the math, we should have done twice. We should have done 2 times in terms of that heavy maintenance. But the question is, have we done this routine maintenance? And of course, when my guests join me, we'll put this question to them. We'll try and get you some answers. But that is very important. Every 6 years, we need to go ahead and do the heavy maintenance. What more do we know? Detailed structural inspection after 20,000 flights. I'm not sure we are there yet, but this is also very important that when we get to this milestone, it's important that we take our presidential jet through that form of, or that phase of, maintenance. Now, when you talk to people who have knowledge about this issue, and then many who have called for new presidential jets, and even former defense ministers, they will tell you that it is important to do some form of comparative analysis. Look around our neighbors. What do they have? What do we have? And juxtapose and see if we are in the same or on the same tangent or on the same wavelength. So we decided to compare Ghana to our West African neighbors. So we're going to do Senegal and Nigeria. I've spoken to you about the Falcon 900 being in service 15 years in terms of its passenger capacity. 11 passengers. You add the 3 crew members. We're talking about some 14 persons who can actually be on that flight or that aircraft. Then you go to Senegal. We simply don't know how long their presidential aircraft has been in service. But what we know is that they have a bigger aircraft or presidential jet that can carry as many as 146 passengers. So no matter where the Senegalese president will be traveling, he will be able to carry along his entire crew or entourage along with him without having to, or people going ahead of him and others also taking another commercial flight. 146, if you compare 8 to ours, 11. And in fact, if you look at the fleets that we have in terms of the repository, or the base of the Air Force, this is in terms of the aircraft that can serve the purpose of a presidential jet. This is the one we have, the Falcon, and that's about 11 passengers. You compare it to Senegal, you can see where we are. Same with our brothers in Nigeria. We almost, compare ourselves to Nigeria in almost everything, jollof and all of that. But in terms of presidential jets, we understand that although they bought an older version of a presidential jet, which was already in use, it has already been in use for 16 years. And what do we know about the capacity? That's about 200 passengers that can actually be on the Nigeria presidential jet. And when they came to Ghana for that defense conference, somewhere around 2021, 2022, if you see the magnitude of the aircraft that actually brought President Buhari, that was very, very big. And in fact, many have said that if you go to Nigeria, the president has a separate presidential jet, and the foreign affairs minister also has her own private jet that they actually fly in. But when you come to our case, it's a bit different, and there have been calls for us to take a relook at this. Now we go away from West Africa and compare ourselves to the international standard. The most famous presidential jet in the world, you cannot never talk about presidential jets across the world without talking about what the U.S. is using, the Air Force One. What do we know so far? It's been in service in the last 35 years. It can carry 102 passengers. So definitely, you will see that 35 years for the U.S. Air Force One and 15 years of ours, you will know it's definitely not about the number of years the aircraft has been in service, but the maintenance, the upgrades. What do you do to the aircraft for it to meet, the purpose or the service it's supposed to render? If you go to Russia, 25 years, 260 people can actually be in that plane. Israel, 29 years and 260 as well. So definitely what you see is that if you compare Ghana to West Africa, our West African neighbors, we are far behind. If we compare ourselves to the international standard, we are also far behind. But what is indeed the history of presidential jets of the country? We understand that the first one since independence was acquired somewhere 1962 by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. The DH-125 was our first presidential jet. And of course, we had to change it at a point somewhere in 1976. We acquired the Fokker 28. And we know this was referred to as the flying coffin, if you remember. This was also a very big controversy when we were switching from the Fokker 28 to the Gulfstream. At that point in time in 1998, it was a big deal. And the question is, why must it always be a big deal when we are upgrading in terms of the aircraft that will carry the first gentleman of the land? And we understand that the Kufuor administration, the NPP was in opposition around that time, did not like the idea of the purchase of the Gulfstream. And as a result of that, even when President Kufuor was in office, he didn't use this presidential jet, and we understand that it was actually sold off. And in fact, moving away from that, we had to come to 2010 when we bought our current presidential jet, which is the Falcon 900. So some years after, the question is, are we facing the same situation we had in 1998 when we were switching from the Fokker 28 to the Gulfstream? And what are the political narrative around this whole acquisition of presidential jets and even talking about presidential travels? That is what we'll be discussing here on PM Express. And in fact, if we are able to go ahead and possibly buy a new one, that will be our fifth presidential jet. But it's important to know what the man who was in the helm of affairs in terms of our defense, what he has been saying, the former defense minister, what he's been saying about presidential jet. And in fact, he said the jet currently is serviceable and airworthy. This was the defense minister in 2021 when the NDC, then in opposition, were saying that why was President Akufo-Addo chartering flights and not using the presidential jets? He said, well, it is serviceable, it is airworthy, but wait, what is the problem? The problem is that, according to the defense minister then, it was too small for the full entourage of the president. So cost-wise, he has done the math and he has seen that, well, 11 passengers, 3 crew members, if you compare ourselves to other neighbors, we are far behind. And in terms of the size, this cannot carry the president and his full entourage. And he says it required multiple refueling and stops. And around that time, it was a very big deal when the defense minister around that time spoke about these stops and the fact that the jet was too small, the capacity was also very small, and in fact, that it required multiple refueling. And this was what he really focused on, and he said that it was not suitable for long-haul travels, right? So it can do travels in the West African space, maybe in Africa, but if you are traveling to, let's say, Japan, as President Mahama did travel some days ago, it will be difficult to go with the Falcon 900 because he has to do a lot of stops. And that was not, strategically, that was not good on behalf of, according to the defense minister then, that if you are going to somewhere around, let's say, even the US, it will be difficult to use the Falcon 900. It's possible. It was suitable for short travels, but such long travel, based on security reasons and the reasons he gave, he felt that it was not appropriate to go on that tangent. But we've gone around, in circles, and we've come to the same conversation. The key question is, why is President John Dramani Mahama traveling in commercial flights? That is the first gentleman of the land. Imagine the president being on the same flight. Questions about national security and all of that. At that point when the NDC, then in opposition, were making that big call, they said it was not safe for the president to be traveling in Hyde or private jets. But if questions were being raised about private jet that was Hyde and not being safe, the key question is the president also traveling on commercial flight also safe? Another important question that we will be seeking answers to. But, I mean, you can never talk about presidential jets and travels without bringing in the current, Minister for Foreign Affairs. Then he was in opposition, 2022, he made this point. And he said that I don't expect a future NDC president to hire jets at such a high cost. Some of us will resign. I would want to be part of such a government. I would want to be part of such a government. And he said when he had that interview with our sister station, Adom FM, that he was going to resign if the president went on that tangent or that trajectory to hire expensive private jet. Today, we all don't know whether the flight to Japan was on a commercial flight or also the private jet. But we've seen information that the government itself has come in to say that, well, the president didn't fly in a private jet. He went on a commercial jet, a flight. But the question is, in the long run, whilst we have the Falcon 900, which is supposed to be the presidential jet, still going and it's still under maintenance in France, what is going to be the fate of the first gentleman of the land? Is he going to continue to fly in commercial planes? And how safe is that? The former defense minister, according to him, when he was making calls for new presidential jets, he said, well, if you get any of these two, will be suitable. We will be in the same line with our neighbors. If you're able to get us a Boeing business jet, that will be good. Or if you get us an Airbus ACJ 319, that will also be good. Because if you compare these two to the current Falcon 900, in fact, there's a big, big difference. But as I asked, the president will continue to travel because there are bilateral arrangements. He needs to go for conference. He needs to meet international, calls and all of that. When it's time for the president to do that in the long run, what is our strategy? What is the strategy of the country? Are we still going to go ahead and allow the president to travel in commercial vehicles? After this break, my guests will join me and we'll explore the conversation and we'll get answers for you. Stay with me. We'll be back. And thank you very much for staying with us here on PM Express. And as you know, PM Express is always brought to you by Centest Tank. It is strong, it is tough, Academic Times, and Pepsodent Cavity Fighter toothpaste. Let me tell you a story, Ghana. Let's talk about water tanks. Do you know that the secret to real water storage? It's simple. If your tank doesn't have the tortoise on it, then it's not the correct tank. Join the Syntec family today and enjoy water storage that's tough like a tortoise. You can call 0244 335 168 to buy now or find one of our 400 agents nationwide. You can shop also online at syntestankgh.com. Syntest Tank, you're strong, you're tough. And Academic Times, the Academic Times Journal is launching soon with 3 distinctive graphic publications in a journal to showcase and empower students across educational levels, while the journal and the tertiary G seeks to ensure that tertiary student research makes an impact by contributing to institutional and national development. That is Academic Times for you. Every time you eat, food and sugars are trapped between our teeth and leading to tooth decay and gum disease. And in some cases, foul breath, unfortunately. But brushing your teeth every morning and night, especially after PM Express, the Pepsodent Cavity Fighter gives you, your teeth, the protection it needs, leaving you with 10 times stronger teeth. Pepsodent, every smile matters. And of course, an important conversation here on PM Express, and my guests have all joined me via Zoom and also on phone. Dominic Nitiwu is former defense minister. He will be on Zoom to help us with this issue. Franklin Kujo is president, Imani Africa, and Professor Daniel Kwesi Ejekum is retired Air Force pilot and aviation expert. He will also be on the show. And James Agaga, he's chairman, Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Gaga, I mean, since you are in government, let me start with you. A lot of controversies around the president's travel to Japan. Can you confirm to us how the president actually traveled to Japan?
No, I think that the Deputy Chief of Staff has made it very clear that the president traveled to Japan with Emirates. So I think the matter is now beyond doubt that, contrary to the speculation that some members of parliament from the minority side have made, the president did not travel with a private jet.
So you're confirming to us that the president was on a commercial jet?
Absolutely.
Well, but are there evidence to show?
The Deputy Chief of Staff has actually spoken to this matter. In fact, I listened to the news today, and one journalist who I believe is accompanying the president on the trip also confirmed that the president flew with Emirates and not a private jet.
So in this case, I know involved here is a big political capital. If the president indeed flew in a commercial jet, we should be seeing, or commercial, plane, we should be seeing photos and videos flying across social media to prove the point that that was the case.
So you think it's not sufficient for the Deputy Chief of Staff who works in the president's office to speak to the matter? I think we should have confidence in our journalists as well. The journalists accompanying the president have spoken. The Deputy Chief of Staff has also spoken. That is sufficient evidence. Alternatively, pictures could have been put out there, but I mean, once they've spoken to the matter, why? We can easily verify. This is not a matter where you need to split hairs over. So I think that sometimes we should take a state officials seriously when they speak. In any case, the Deputy Chief of Staff has not demonstrated that he's somebody who is noted for telling lies or misleading the public. So I think that with the greatest of respect, let us accord respect to officialdom so far as this matter is concerned.
Well, fair enough. I mean, let me bring in former Defense Minister Dominic Nitu. I mean, you've been Defense Minister before, and I know in such a circumstance, a big advice comes from Defense. In your case, was there ever a case where President Akufo-Addo had to fly in commercial planes?
Good evening to your cherished listeners. There have been several occasions that the former president, Nana Akufo-Addo, has flown on commercial planes, Emirates, Qatar Airways, British Airways, several times. And so it's not a new thing for the president. If indeed he did go on commercial, he would either be on first class or on business class. And there have been people from Ghana who be on these categories of the flight who can confirm if so be it. There are many people who want to take pictures with the president while he's on board. So these things will come out. And if the chief of staff is speaking the truth, so be it. But if he's lying, so be it. But I'm just shocked that we're still doing petty politics with some of these things. It is the beam of this country. And unless and until we realize that we're joking with national security, and I said it before, and I'm not going to change my mind, that we're joking with national security. The president is traveling and we're arguing as to whether he rented a jet, he flew on a private jet, or he flew on commercial. What is it to gain? That's a petty politics that's brought us to where we are today. And I think that we should move away from it as a country. Ghana is a very, very important country in the Commonwealth of countries. In West Africa, extremely very important. In the world, same thing. I don't think what we're doing to ourselves is anything that is going to help us. I have said it, and I'm not going to change. People think that, we are in opposition, so there are some things we should change. I will not. What I believe in is what I believe in, and I think that there's some things that are good for this nation. There's some things that Ghana deserves, And I think that I will continue to say what I believe is the truth. People may disagree and do politics. And I think that the handlers of the president, the people around, they're just doing petty politics. I don't think it's necessary. I really don't think it's necessary. They did politics of it, and so they think that they must continue with it. It's not necessary at all. I don't think this argument we should even continue with it.
Well, let me bring in Professor Daniel Kwesi Ejikuma at this point. I mean, it's been confirmed. I mean, the president flew in a commercial plane. Granted, that is true. What are the national security implications? Are we really joking with our national security as far as the travels of the president is concerned?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the program. And I would also like to say a good evening to my fellow panelists. Basically, I am here as somebody who has been at the operational level. Disclosure, I was in the communication squadron of the Ghana Air Force, and we were tasked to provide transportation services to government, for government business. So I've been in it. I've seen all the intricacies. So far as I'm concerned, I believe that Ghanaians elected the president, Ghanaians elected public officials to conduct business for and on behalf of the people of Ghana. And I believe that we have a responsibility to provide them with the necessary tools for them to be effective. One of the tools is that they have to also conduct foreign diplomacy. They have to travel around. And so whatever is appropriate for us to get that done should be. Basically, I always say that if the Ghana Air Force is provided with the necessary platform, we would be able to have operational effectiveness. And in terms of the security aspect of it, I mean, the best, in my opinion, would be to have the Ghana Air Force being the one conducting that role. Why am I saying so? I would not mention name, but I remember when I was in service, there was a time we didn't have a platform to provide government transportation, and it was a high-level government functionary. An aircraft was rented to carry this high-level functionary, and the crew ended up almost landing in a wrong airport. And that was scary. Okay, so that tells you the implication, the security implication. You have crew that are not Ghana Air Force crew, security clearances, their competencies. I mean, the Ghana Air Force, yeah, we do due diligence, but it is not the same as having our own Ghanaian trained, competent, proficient Ghana Air Force pilots conducting the flight. Okay? And like in this case, they ended up almost landing in a wrong airport. Can you imagine putting the president in a wrong airport and the security implication? Because once the president is there, whoever is the president, there should be security cover. And so you don't want to expose the president or top government functionaries in such a scenario. And so that is why we should be, there should be a dispassionate discussion on this one. Let's put aside the politics. We have a responsibility as a nation to provide what is appropriate for the president and for top government officials. And there are other, things that I'll be talking about later that for government business, we also do. You'll be surprised, the same aircraft that carries the president, there are times we co-opt it to fly our national team to do evacuation. And so it's broader than just narrowing it down to a presidential jet. It is basically giving the Ghana Air Force the capability to provide transportation services for government business. I think that should be the scope of our discussion.
Well, I mean, an important point made there. Let me bring in Franklin Cudjoe at this point. And I mean, Franklin, you have been talking about the investments we've made so far. My question is, after spending all these millions, how did we get here where our president has to be flying on commercial flights? Hello, Franklin. Yeah, unfortunately, we do not have Franklin. Now, let me come to Dominic Nitu. I mean, the late defense minister gave an outlook and the situation of our presidential jet, and he said that was a jet that had its engine tank corroded. But I recall that in 2021, 2022, You made mention that we are taking that jet to France for maintenance and was going to come back stronger. My simple question to you was, in what state did you leave our presidential jet?
So first of all, thank you. You are getting my time is wrong. President had an emergency landing in the United States in 2019, either 2018, late 2018 or early 2019, and stopped using that jet. Then my good friend Honorable Okujoto decided to pick up on the president, and everywhere he was giving information, he was the president, the jet was a good jet. And so I had to come to Parliament to tell the people of Ghana what was wrong. And I did say that, in fact, I hadn't even come to Parliament. It was the second time, 2021, I first came to Parliament. Yeah. I came to Parliament to tell them that, look, the jet had a problem because there was an emergency landing. So we wanted to take it to France to check exactly what the problem was. That's what I said at the time. But even if the jet was good, the mistake by the Mills Mahama administration in 2019 to cancel off the bigger jets, which was the Airbus, was wrong. President Kufuor had ordered 2 jets. And you can ask Agaga why they canceled it. 2 jets. One was a big jet that could carry over 100 people, and this small one that carries a little over 11 people.
Yeah.
When President Mills came, because of the politicking in 2008 elections that the NDC did, he canceled the big one, and they only paid for the small one. That's why we are where we are today. And so we were now left with a jet that could only carry the president and his immediate security. So instead of becoming a strategic lift for the country, and I believe that's what the Air Force officer is trying to say, that we need a strategic lift for the country so that it is not termed as a presidential jet. It became a presidential jet because only the president can use it. You just carry 11 passengers or maximum 12 with a crew. So that's the crew making about 15, 16 people. But if we had a strategic lift as President Koh had envisaged and it was there, then our national teams who are traveling will use it. Our soldiers who are going to Lebanon, the UN operations will use it. Anybody, the Speaker of Parliament will use it. It becomes a jet for government business. And that was the point I made on the floor of Parliament, that we need a jet that can be a strategic lift. That's what the Air Force has recommended to me, that they need a strategic airlift that Ghana can use. If we have money to buy more than one, I don't have a problem. The president can use the exclusive one and we'll continue. Nigeria has more than 3 jets, for God's sake. They have more than, Senegal is very, very new. Nigeria has more than 3 jets. We have small ones and we have big ones. And the big one is what we are talking about. In fact, the big ones, they have 2. I don't want to talk about what others have. I'm talking about what we need and what we think we have to get. All I said at that time was that President Kufuor had ordered 2 jets. Then because of politicking, the NDC decided to cancel the big one and left the small one. And we are back to where we are today after 50 years. Then in 2023, I came back to tell Parliament that we had sent the jet to France in July 2023. Why did they take it to France? We took it to France for the normal yearly
the routine maintenance
overhaul of the jets, because it has reached the 4 years that we needed to do, in fact 8 years that we needed to do. And so we took it there, hoping that in 7 months it will come back. It did serious maintenance in France, hoping that it will come back, and we gave ourselves up to January 2024 to come back. But when the jet went, the Air Force officers obviously are always with them throughout. Anytime the jet is there, the jet is not there alone. I want to let you know. Our pilots fly and they stay with the jet. So that nobody can tamper with it. So they sit there, they watch what is happening from end to end, and they bring it back. Remember, it carries the president of the province, so they don't want to compromise to the security. So they are there. We sponsor them. We pay hard currency to sponsor them, and they stay throughout. If it's 10 months, they will stay. If it's 2 months, they will stay. So they stayed throughout, and in January, we realized that no, the jet had corrosion in the tank. In January, there was corrosion in the tank, and for that matter, the jet couldn't return until April 2024, because they wanted to make sure that all the corrective parts are corrected. That's what the minister was talking about. The late minister, may so rest in peace, when he said that anytime he went for servicing, instead of the normal time. And we added almost 3.5 months for the corrosive part of the tank should be repaired.
Was it repaired?
And then it came back. Akufo-Addo started using it. I didn't have any problem with it any longer.
So my question is, did it come back with a repaired tank or it came back with a corroded tank?
No, it came back with everything anew. It came back, okay. They worked on it. They said they are the manufacturers. Satisfied it, worked on it, and said everything was okay. There was no problem. So the former president started using it in April 2024. He used it up to the time that he handed it over. That is why when the matter came up, I said we have given a jet that is airworthy, that is serviceable, that can fly. But after using it for 1 more year, I suspect, and not as suspect, it was found out that no, the corrective power was still giving the jet problems. So the Air Force recommended to the new government to send them back to France for them to work on it. What I think we should not be doing is politicking. Even though the former minister is gone, I don't really want to criticize him, but it's wrong for him to come and start talking about expensive jet. What is the meaning of expensive jet? Does he even know? Has he even told Ghanaians how much?
I'll come back to you.
Or he's relying on.
Yeah.
He's relying on what Okujoto said. I think that's terribly wrong.
I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you on the cost involved, but I want to go to Mr. Agaga. You are the chairman of the Defense and Interior Committee. What are your plans? Are you going to continue with this routine where the president would have to be traveling on commercial flights, or do you have a plan to purchase a new presidential jet or any bigger jet that you give to the Air Force for this purpose?
Very happy the former defense minister is admonishing all of us to desist from playing politics with presidential jets. I'm very, very happy. But the point needs to be made that the commencement of politics around presidential jets actually started with the MPP, the former minister's government. You remember President Kufuor's refusal to use the Gulfstream presidential jet. Eventually, that jet was traded for some fighter aircraft. That was the beginning of the politics around presidential jets.
But Mr. Agaga, haven't we moved on? It's been more than 2 decades. Haven't we moved on?
Yeah. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. That said, I agree entirely with the former Minister for Defense that we should not play politics with presidential jets. Now, we are all not in doubt that given the corrosive nature of even the engine of the Falcon executive jet, which was, of course, our presidential jet, the corrosive nature of its turbofan, fuel tank, a lot of work needs to be done on that jet. But let me take you back to the reasons why President Hill canceled the order for a bigger jet. At the time, I recall the reasons President Mills canvassed for canceling the order for the bigger jet was not because of politics. At the time, our economy was having challenges. He had just taken over the reins of government in this country and wanted to save money to run other equally important sectors of our economy.
But I remember. I remember it came in service.
It's very important. Can I land on this point?
Go ahead, please.
So he said, rather than have 2 jets at the same time, let us settle for one. So that subsequently, if the economy improves, performance indicators improve, we can then go back for the second jet. So President Mills did not at the time say that the bigger jet was not necessary. He only gave indication that, look, let the economy improve a little bit. But in the meantime, let's settle for the smaller jet.
But this was an economy that had found oil and was projected to be one of the fastest growing economies. You were given 2 options. You decided to go for the small one with the aim that you were going to save money?
The fact that we discovered oil and had started producing oil did not mean that we started making money. It took quite some time before our economy started growing.
So that means that the economy wasn't as bad as maybe you are trying to paint, right?
No. We inherited a very bad economy at the time. And the president was mindful about the fact that, look, we needed to invest in healthcare delivery. We needed to invest in education. We needed to invest in agriculture. But he maintained that, yes, we needed to have a presidential jet. But for the meantime, let's make do with one. So I think we need to set the record straight. But having said that, you are asking me whether the president should continue to travel in commercial flights. I think that Ghana has come of age. I don't disagree with my brother, Honorable Dominic Nituwu, when he says, look, it is important to put the politics aside and retool our Air Force in such a way that the Air Force would have strategic lift capability. When he was minister, anytime he appeared before the Committee for Defense and Interior, he never minced words about the need for us to invest in our armed forces. And I agreed with it. If you ask him, he would bear testimony to the fact that anytime.
But it was the same call he was making. It was the same call he was making 2-3 years ago. And your party in opposition said it was not necessary. Why is it necessary now?
My party never kicked against the procurement of a brand new jet for the president. The minister can bear me out. The issues were only raised at the time about public expenditure on the hiring of private jets, when at the time, in the view of some of our colleagues in Parliament, the presidential jet was in a pristine condition. I think those were the issues. Those were the issues. The issue of the purchase of a brand new aircraft for the Air Force or a jet which would serve as an alternative presidential aircraft for the president was never rejected by my party. So let's set the record at all. I think the minister will bear me out. And so today, if we're saying that the presidential jet, I mean, it's corroded, this engine and so on, and it's taking us forever to, especially given the fact that previously we had a similar incident, I think that there is no problem at all. If we all agree collectively that it is wrong security-wise for our president to fly commercially, then of course let us act in unity and then take appropriate decisions to ensure that our Air Force has strategic lift capability. I wouldn't oppose such an idea at all.
I'll come to you shortly, but let me go to Professor Ejekum. I mean, Prof, what we have seen so far in terms of even the data, and you have been in operations before, we don't seem to be on the safe side in terms of strategic positioning. Must we always look at the cost when we are talking about, presidential jet and other, procurement that will help boost the Ghana Air Force?
And I think that at the end of the day, I believe the best people to defer to when it comes to platforms to be able to be effective is the Ghana Air Force. And I believe they would sit down, they will look at the technical requirements, they will look at the operational requirements, they will look at so many other variables that others might not think of, and they will come up with their proposal. We are talking about strategic lift for the Ghana Air Force. I think some of the key variables that comes to mind is operational effectiveness. Can we get the job done? Okay. Do we have the platform to be able to conduct, to carry out our mandate of providing transportation for government business? I still don't want to use presidential jet because it's not only the president that we provide those services for. Other things come in. We are looking at our flexibility. So let me we have the president traveling around. There might be times that we don't have a platform, though, so now the president is going commercial all over the place. Something happens in Ghana. Immediately, the president has to maybe return to Ghana to attend to that issue. That is where the flexibility comes in, because if the president is traveling with a safe and appropriate aircraft provided by the Ghana Air Force, we just marshal, we organize, we get the president back to Ghana. We are talking about safety here. Okay? The president is traveling. I'm not saying the airlines are not safe, but no, we have our own standards of safety and security. So that is something that we are cognizant of the president or the top government officials or whoever we are carrying. We do a lot of diligence beyond that which maybe a normal airline would do. And so that is something we need to consider. Cost effectiveness. Okay. Let me give you an example. So the president, we don't have a platform that is appropriate now. So the president, maybe we might have to hire a jet. We have what we call the direct operational cost. So if the president wants to travel maybe from here to the United States non-stop, we might end up hiring an aircraft like maybe the Global 7500. Okay. The direct operational cost for that particular platform ranges between $16,000 to $19,000 dollars per hour. You are talking about almost an 11-hour trip, just one way. So that's almost, you are getting close to about $200,000. So in and out, we are clocking about $400,000. Can you imagine if we had the most strategic, appropriate aircraft, like the Boeing business jet? And I did some checks. I mean, that one has the range. It can carry between 19 to 50 passengers, depending on the configuration, with extended tanks. The president will be able to travel with entourage, with journalists and everybody safely without staging, without maybe, let me give you an example, going to the United States, the Falcon will have to stop in Santa Maria to do a technical stop. You put the president there, it's an exposure from a security perspective. There is something we are not thinking about. We call it crew duty time. So if you are doing staging and I'm the pilot, we have the number of hours that we can fly. If you put me, because of a technical stop, you're extending my flight duty time. And because of that, there might be situations that if they are delayed, the president cannot take off because we have exceeded our flight duty time. So these are some of the technicalities that maybe others might not think about, but the Ghana Air Force, my colleagues who are still there, they know about all these things. So when they come up with a proposal, suggesting a platform that is appropriate for us to carry out our duty of conveying the president, ministers, the Black Stars, whoever we've been assigned to, it behoves on the top government officials to listen to the top leadership of the Ghana Air Force and to be able to provide make the appropriations which will make us effective. We want to do the job. If you don't give us the tools, if you don't give us the platforms, we become deficient and we expose the president and top government officials to both security and safety risk.
Well, Franklin, I mean, anytime you talk about procurement, the first thing we smell is corruption, right? And that has been a problem and what we are always scared of. We've done some form of investment, possibly not just in presidential jets, but also in some aircraft. You have been looking at the numbers. Do you think that we've had value for money over the years? Hello, Franklin, can you hear me? Unfortunately, we cannot connect to Franklin. I mean, let me put this question to the former defense minister. We've had, a lot of investment in the Air Force and all of that. The question has always been procurement and corruption. Do you think that in your case, you were faced with this issue to the extent that it became difficult as a point for you to push through the agenda of getting us a new jet or a new aircraft that can serve as a presidential jet and also possibly do other form of responsibilities?
Thank you very much. So first of all, if you know how armed forces do their procurement, and let's say MOD, Minister of Defense, they do their procurement, especially with big equipment like this, very difficult for corruption to come in there. The only form is when you have agents, you pay agency fees. But if you cut off those things, it's very, very difficult. the prices are fixed and the world knows the prices. You cannot do anything about it. So I don't know where that is coming from. And I can say that so far, there's value for money for everything that we have bought. In fact, we have over benefited as a state. But I just wanted to tell my brother Agaga and come back to it that Kufuor left a very good economy. You may argue with it because of politics. You go and read Dr. Dufour's first budget. And when you read the budget instead of the introduction, you will understand why I say that he left a very good economy. Also, the economy was not something that anybody could have used to say he was taking off the big jet. The reason was very, very simple. If you look at the CD to dollar at that time, it was around 1.2, 1.3. If you even look at the monies that we pay to people, either judgment, debt, or those kind of things, it could have bought us a new jet. You remember the famous Woyomi case? It could have bought us a new jet. So let's leave that one about the economy. There were maybe, I think this was pure politicking that created that problem. You can argue with me, but I just think that. Thirdly, I also think that we should be, as I said, we should be very careful politicizing these things because it will not help us as a state. I am of the firm belief that we should not normalize the situation where the president uses his brother's jet in moving around the country. It is not a good thing. No country allows that. We should not normalize it. It's because the Air Force doesn't have what it takes to move the president. So the president now uses his brother's jet.
Is that not safer than the commercial flights?
No, it's not about being safe. Morality-wise and everything, we should not allow that. I'll give you the reason why. Akufo-Addo came into government in about 8 years. I know businessmen who didn't have aircraft, but did government procurement and bought jets that are equivalent to our jets. If you give credence to the fact that a president can use a relative's jet or a brother's jet, a president will come and empower his brothers to buy jets for him to use. It's not good for us as a country. I think that the Air Force should be given the platforms to be able to move our president and protect our president at all times. The Ghana Armed Forces should be able to protect our president at all times. It should be able to move the speaker at all times, move our important chiefs at all times, move the Black Stars at all times, and move they themselves, the soldiers, at all times. We should not allow the situation whereby we are, president can use his brother. What? Can Ghanaians ask themselves a second? Imagine President Mahama's brother did not have a jet. What would have happened? Imagine for a fact that another president comes and says, well, I'm going to empower my brother to buy a jet. If I'm president, I can give 2 contracts to my brother and he can buy a jet out of it. Just 2. And he can buy a jet. Is that what we are looking for? I think morally it's not good. The people can argue is his brother's
So are you
jet.
saying that the president will be dishing out favors to his brother because he's able to use his jet anytime he wants?
I'm just telling you that we should not normalize it. It's not a good practice. We should find a way out. It's because of the politicking that we did. That's why we're able to do what we are doing now. But I'm saying to you that as a country, we should give the Air Force what it needs. As Minister for Defense, I was not speaking because I was Dominic Nitio. I was not speaking my mind. Everything I read out there was a request from the Ghana Air Force people, the men and women in Air Force. I tell you, if you are Minister for Defense and you look at your pilots, and some people, you say, well, let's go on a heli, and people are afraid and back up, and you look at the faces of your pilots, you want to weep for yourself. Because, for example, if you had very, very good helis, the person will not back out. But you know this pilot cannot refuse. He has to fly.
So were there instances where you commissioned that certain helicopters be used and you saw fear in the face of the pilot because of the bad?
No, I'm not talking about the pilots. There are many instances where I asked colleagues, I have people to enter the heli, they were afraid and refused. Even now, no.
Because they knew it was not in good condition, isn't it?
It's not about being in good condition. You know, military facilities, whether it is CASA or the helids that we have today, may not be as comfortable as the private ones. So some people are not willing to go and join them. I'm saying that there's no aircraft, and the Air Force officer will tell, there's no aircraft that will be allowed to fly if you don't have the certificate to fly from the manufacturer. It's not simply possible. That I want to put in there. Also, secondly, without the Air Force, there is no way that we could have successfully operated the P2 fire disaster. It's not possible. Thirdly, when COVID came and everybody was running around the world to bring back their people, and the world had stopped helping each other. Without the little facilities that the Air Force had, our people would have been left at the mercy. Can you imagine our people who we had to go to Senegal and bring, Guinea and bring, Congo and bring? What would have happened to those people? We had to go to Germany. We had to go to Geneva. We had to go to Kenya. We had to go to Switzerland to bring medicine, COVID medicine for our people because nobody was moving. Nobody wanted to bear with us. Can you imagine if the Air Force didn't have those facilities? What would have happened to us? So the strategic lift is not just because we want to lift the president. I keep using that word. We should be very, very careful.
Okay.
I went to Parliament and I told Kujoto in his face that if we keep opposing the Air Force, because I could see sadness in their faces that why are they politicizing their procurement? I was procuring for the army. Nobody politicized their purchases. Nobody. I procured armored vehicles. I was procuring tanks, multiple records for them. I was procuring guns for them. I was procuring this. I was giving accommodation. But when it came to the Air Force, we were politicizing. I look at their faces, and the Air Force was to ask me, why is there any time we want to buy facilities for them and the Navy we are politicizing it? Why? Minister, all I'm saying is that I told him that one day we will regret. I don't know how we are going to regret, but I knew that one day we will regret.
That was an important question. Let me bring in Franklin Kujo at this point. I mean, are we at a point where we have to regret because of what we have done in terms of the politicization of some of these decisions, especially in buying aircraft for the Air Force? Are we at a point where we have to say that we have to regret or we have regretted?
Well, good evening. I guess it's not just the purchase of an important, should I call it equipment or a facilitator of a sort, that we have questions to ask as a country. I mean, I think we play for almost everything. And when it comes to maintenance, I think we are just, I don't think we have a strategy as a state when it comes to retooling almost everything, right? Not just the armed forces, not just the police, just with everything else, right? So the strategy is just not there. And I think, and that's the problem we have in this country. So as to whether we've regretted, I think, yes, we've regretted, but the question obviously would be, have we learned the lesson? And indeed, are we going to just lament after a week or two and then go back to basics? I think those are the things that we need to be mindful of. I obviously think that the military, as disciplined as we normally hear they are, should take it upon themselves this time around and ensure that whatever they need, whatever they have to do in order to get whatever equipment they need to get, they should get it. And I think it includes the president as well. I mean, Dominic, you know that the president obviously is the commander of the armed forces. And I think that his comfort, not just comfort, his safety is paramount, right? So while we are saying that the army should be retooled and should I call it, must have a proper strategy to deal with the maintenance culture and whatever, I think it's also important that we are having this conversation about whether the presidency or the president needs a new or a better, to invest in a better, should I call it a jet or a plane? I don't even know why we call it a jet, right? Should it be, maybe Dr. Jekun will tell us exactly what the difference really is. I mean, I've even thought that, well, sometimes you actually get a nice plane, plane that is, rather than calling it a jet. In any case, the point I'm making is, if the commander of the armed forces of a country isn't safe, then what else are we going to do for the rest of the forces? So for me, it's not just a question of purchasing a new thing, but also the question about again, and Dominic, I'm sure you know, one of the reasons why people question these things, and I think as politicians, we all do it. We in civil society always ask questions. It has become one of the thorny issues in our economy and our country. It's procurement abuse. And I've never believed that the purchase of military equipment should be kept in some sort of wrapped in some sort of conversations that we should hash it and not talk about all the details about it. No, I've never believed in that at all. Well, so if we come to Parliament with the details of purchasing whatever we want to purchase, let us examine the contents clearly. And I think rather than shouting like you mentioned, who were obviously against this whole thing. I think they were probably doing that purely on the basis of maybe procurement, because they suspect. There's always suspicion. I think they came with the Falcon, they came with the Airbus thing, and so maybe we should open it up. How do we ensure that we are procuring?
Important point there. I mean, gentlemen, kindly stay with me. We'll be back after this short break. We have other angles that we really want to explore, especially what is our plan? I mean, going forward, are we going to procure a new jet, or we have to resort to using, commercial flight? We'll be back after this short break. Gentlemen, I'm grateful that you could stay with me. I mean, the final leg of our conversation, we have just about 10 minutes more to go, so we need to be really quick. And the first question goes to, Mr. Agaga. I mean, we've looked at the numbers so far, and in fact, let's do this math. We know that the president is going to Japan, and he will be going with a group or his entourage. If you do the math, I mean, were we not better off going in a presidential jet than possibly going on a commercial jet that usually comes with safety concerns and all of that?
Nobody denies the fact that this country deserves to have a presidential jet. So I think the argument has revolved around the availability of the presidential jet or its unavailability, and what ought to be done when the presidential jet is unavailable. In some situations, we have found that the president of this country would usually go in for private jets and pay at exorbitant rates. That has always been the bone of contention. But as to whether this country deserves to own a presidential jet for presidential travels, I don't think anybody from across the political divide has ever raised objection.
Well, so because you brought in exorbitant fees, so in your case, what should be the ideal price? Because I know jets are very expensive.
Well, I have not a travel and tour agent, and so I'll not want to dabble in that. The most important thing is that our Air Force has certain critical requirements. And as a country, I believe that we must honor the requirements and demands of our Air Force so that they can execute their constitutional and statutory mandate, which is to give air support in times of war to our army, and also to have the capability to do strategic, lift services for our country, whether it is medical evacuation or the communications squadron has to fly the president around the world to engage in diplomacy and what have you. I think that these are the issues which should engage our attention. And I can say that, look, as for President Mahama, has not made secret his intentions to retool our armed forces. I mean, my brother Dominic will testify to the fact that President Mahama was very instrumental in the acquisition of the Qatar aircraft. I mean, there were 3 in number. Unfortunately, one had an accident, so we have been operating with 2. The Z9 helicopters. One, unfortunately, was involved in the tragic accident which claimed the lives of our compatriots, our fallen heroes. May their souls rest in peace. And so, fortunately, President Mahama is back in the seat. and he's saying that, look, we have to retool our armed forces. We have to retool the Air Force. The Air Force must have some fighting capability. And my brother Dominic is aware that even when he was minister, he made the effort to, retool the Air Force. We supported him.
Well, Mr. Gaga, how do you... Yeah.
We supported him. It is my expectation that when plans to acquire, to retool the Air Force come before us, they would extend to us the kind of support I extended to my brother Dominic when he was Minister for Defense in my capacity as his ranking member. We're looking forward to having that kind of support and collaboration from his head. And I have no doubt in my mind, I know him very well, that he will not hesitate in extending support to this government in our quest to ensure that our Air Force, our Army, our Navy are retooled. We position them in such a way.
Let me bring in Professor Jakum at this point. Thank you very much. Prof, looking at the presidential jets, the question has been value for money and exorbitant fee. How much should we be looking at, and what should be the ideal plan going forward in terms of the procurement? What should we look at? What should we go in for, and how much should we budget? And in terms of the long-term plan, what should be our plan?
We almost all agree that there is a need to re-equip the Ghana Air Force to be able to carry out their mandate. So I'm very happy. And at the end of the day, whatever platform that we have doesn't belong to political party A or B. It belongs to the people of Ghana. One thing about aircraft acquisition is that we have what we call the lead time. So it's not just like I go to Melcom and I buy a fan.
Absolutely.
There should be prior arrangement, because sometimes it takes about 2 to 3 years for them to get the aircraft in itself, and then they might have to get a vendor who will sort of configure it for executive travel, because with executive travel, you have certain requirements, secure communication like satellite communication, even the navigational instruments for flying. You're talking about the capability to conduct what we call category 3 approaches, low visibility approaches, and all this navigational communicational aids that you have on board. And so if anything, the time is now. And like I keep saying, the Ghana Air Force has their specialty, they have their experts, and they come up with their proposal. And I believe that we have to listen to the top leadership of the Ghana Air Force. And then talking about platform, in my opinion, I believe that based on the cost-benefit analysis for a country like Ghana, having an aircraft like the Boeing business jet, the MAX 8, will be appropriate because it has the range and the capability, and in terms of its direct operational cost, will be most appropriate to get from like point to point. We call it point to point, without the need for technical staging, which I said earlier could impact crew duty time. It has security implications because the more you expose somebody like the president to technical stops, it's not the best. And then we can also use it for other duties. A BBJ can be used for evacuation of our citizens, in times of crisis, to carry out transporting medical, like
Black Stars
vaccines,
and all,
Black Stars, vaccines for anthrax, which we have done as an Air Force. We use the the Fokker 28. We carried vaccines to the northern part of Ghana using the Fokker 28 when it was a presidential jet. So let's disabuse our mind that, it's only the president who is flying. It's more a strategic airlift. So let us just listen to the leadership of the Ghana Air Force.
Okay. Well, Mr. Nitu, you have been in this game for a long time. You were the defense minister, obviously. You've also done your checks and you know what's involved in terms of even the cost. If we are going for a new presidential jet, in your estimation, what should be our budget? And what should we go in for?
So, first of all, thank you very much. I just wanted to point to my brother that the then NDC went all out against the acquisition of any new jet. The Assistant Secretary said it. The president himself is on record to have said against it. The deputy minister, Broja Jemfi, went against it. The minister who lost his life, may his soul rest in peace, went against it. Ablako went against it. The then minority leader said they will never support us. So they were on record to have rejected it. But I want to let them know that I will never say that we should not acquire a strategic lift for the Air Force. The Air Force presented 2 proposals to me that I discussed with them. In fact, I discussed with them twice. Agaga was very supportive, and a few others were very, very supportive. 3 meetings we had in Akusumbo, the Defense and Interior Committee, the Finance Committee of Parliament, and the leadership of both sides. They went to Akusumbo, they all agreed. But of course, when Okujote started doing this, his politics, and the party came in, equipped the leadership, and they went against it. But they all agreed that either we should go for the Boeing business jet, or we should go for the Airbus.
How much would that cost? How much would that cost?
390. You are looking at a range. It depends on the type, between 100 and $120 million, depending on the type and configuration.
No, come again on the cost. You give a range.
The Air Force at that time was configuring it between 50 and 100 people, depending on how they wanted it.
Come again on the cost. How much you think that will cost us? You mentioned the figure, but that actually escaped me. If you can come again.
No, I just mentioned the figure that at that time it could have cost us in upwards of $100 million. That's what I said.
$100 million for one jet, right?
A shell, yes, that's a shell aircraft. That is big enough like that. But it depends on what you do in added on. If you decide to make it very luxurious, it could reach 300 million, it could reach 120 million, depending on what you want to do. All I'm saying is that the Air Force are the people who will recommend to you, the minister, to bring it to government. It's not you. If you cannot, in fact, it's not wise for you, the minister, to go and say, this is what I want to buy for you. No, it's generated from the Air Force, the end users. The end users are those who generate it. So everything, as I said, it was the Air Force. It's still all on my phone, and I have all the files. The files are the MOD. It is not something that we have done all the work.
Okay.
It's just the political kickback from the NDC, the way the NDC politicized it, that it was very difficult for us to do. But I want to say something, and I'm being very frank.
Go ahead.
I left a path for the NDC to be able to raise money without necessarily depending on the finance minister, and they know it. A lot of money if they want to.
What was that part, if you can share with us?
No, I'm saying I've told the president. Yes, the other day I said it. I said that, you see, dollar power area.
Mm-hmm.
If you are going to the dollar power area, you have to cross the Black Volta.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are coming from the Ivory Coast side, there's no river. That is our territory. It's one of the richest areas in Ghana. I literally used that area as a collateral. When I say collateral, I sat with the Ghana the Industry Defense Force and said, look, you know something? Get the soldiers, and we are building an FOB there. Get the soldiers there and make sure you use the resources in that area to re-equip the armed forces. You can make $1 billion to $2 billion there in less than 5 years.
And that can support the armed forces, right?
Yes, for the armed forces. Use the resources there to ensure. So if the country wants money, the money is there.
So unfortunately, we don't have time. So let me bring in. I mean, that's a brilliant, a source of income that you have actually shared. I don't know if the government will take it, but last comments from Mr. Kujo. What do you think should be the ideal situation? Your concern is about procurement. What should we follow, and how do we get this done without having to fall on the old trajectory?
Retooling is not rocket science.
Yeah.
In this part of our world, it's a procurement nightmare. And I think we need to fix that. And the state must be strategic enough to fix that. And we should not just leave Parliament to do that. We should ensure that aspects like Professor Jekum, and again, these aspects must be part of the procurement process. I think that way there will be enough confidence in the system. Of course, there are people say, well, what do they know? But they actually are the ones on the field, and they know these things. We can even stretch it to include relevant actors in the civil society as well, those who deal with procurement.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. Involve the experts. Let's get this done. This is the right time to do it. Gentlemen, I'm so glad that you could join me on this conversation. Unfortunately, this is where time will allow us to peg our conversation. There's more on Joy News. Do stay with us. This is Joy News, independent, fearless, and credible. My name is Isaac Kofi Ejay.